Today we're going to walk through a scope document, or otherwise called a statement of work. This is a very basic summary of a scope of work document. There are many other versions, and you're welcome to explore different versions, but this really includes the key components that you want to include in a scope document. And again, just a refresher about when you do this scope document typically. It usually occurs as part of a conversation with your client in the first part or phase of a project, where you identify a number of questions that you want to ask to define what the scope of the project is going to be. And then from that information, you frame out the scope of work document to help you as you move forward into the project. So typical things that you want to include are, first of all, the team name. In this scenario, it's the Powerpuff Girls. And then a high-level purpose. Why are you taking the time and the resources to do this project? And in this scenario, the project was an employee engagement survey for the Anywhere Park District. And as you can see, there were two key objectives, one being the creation of the survey itself, and then the second was the analysis of the survey results and a final report as well. Moving down from the purpose, you then delve into a little more detail with the requirements. And the requirements are the key components of the project. So as you can see, it outlines the draft survey, feedback that's going to be received from the client on the draft. There will be a period where you'll make some changes, and then culminating with the survey being sent out. And then after you receive the data and the survey is closed, then the consultant will pull all that information together to complete a final report and submit that back to the client. So that's the requirements section. From there, you delve into the roles and responsibilities, both of the team itself, so what's the work they're going to do, as well as what the client or end user will do from their end. There's a real interplay between what your team will be able to do as a result of the feedback or input from the client as well. So in this particular scenario, the project team is responsible for that survey, preparing the questions, sending it out, gathering the responses, as well as creating and sending out weekly reminders, and then preparing that final report and presentation. In order to achieve that, the client or the end user has to provide a list of employees to send the survey out to. They also need to provide feedback on the survey itself to make sure that it's what the client needs. There needs to be some level of communication between the staff and the leadership about the success of the survey itself in terms of the response rate, and then they need to also provide feedback on the final report and presentation. So those are the roles and responsibilities. Moving down into the timeline, it's good to incorporate a high-level timeline. So the key steps of the project. You don't need to delve into the details, which we'll get into later in the project charter. But for example, you want to include the survey date, the draft report, some feedback from the client, and then the final report in a high-level timeline. And then wrapping up the scope document, typically you want to include some level of cost estimate as well as how billing will occur and that type of thing in the scope of work. So again, as I mentioned, you can get a lot more detailed in this, but these are the key components that you want to include in a scope of work document.